How you doing? All right, for the country, it's Arbutus. Best First Lady we ever had, Kendall Ehrlich. How are you guys? Why Arbutus? It's the center of the political universe. And it's the home of Bob and Nancy Ehrlich. All right, the big guy's back here. What's the election about?
Getting rid of Obamacare.
Repealing Obamacare, right? It's repealing Obamacare. Yeah. Stopping the crazy spending, regulatory reform, real job growth in the private sector. No more czars. Yeah. Right? Ending the sense of entitlement. There's one guy who will do it. There's one guy who's willing to stop the assault on our personal and economic freedom from the Obama administration. One guy willing to stand in the way and stop and become the next president of the United States. Ladies and gentlemen, Governor, soon to be President, Mitt Romney.
So much. What an honor to be here. Thank you so much. Governor Ehrlich and Kendall and Mom and Dad Ehrlich, thank you for welcoming me here to Arbutus. It's I don't think I've been here before. Have I been here before? Bob, what do you think? No, I've been with the governor, going different places of the state, and saw his son playing baseball, Little League, right? Little League. Now he's probably older than Little League, isn't he? He's a big boy. It's an honor to be here with you and to come fresh from a couple of great things. Puerto Rico, Illinois, those worked pretty darn well. So happy with that response. And Just before we left to fly here this morning, Ann and I were together. It is our anniversary, and thank you. My cell phone rang, and I looked at it, and it just said Jeb on it. And I picked up the phone, and it was Jeb Bush, and he said. He said, I didn't even have to ask. He said, Mitt, I want to let you know I'm endorsing you today, and that was good news. So I'm here talking with you, and I understand the president is out west. He's talking to people out there, trying to explain to them why his energy policies are working so well. And I mean, the man can speak well, but I don't know. Speaking about turning that story around is going to be harder for him to do than even some of the other things he's had to take on. And how he can explain that his policies make a lot of sense, I don't know. He's going to be announcing that he's completing the lower half of the Keystone Pipeline. You know, the one that's coming from Canada. I'm just not quite sure what kind of impact that's going to have, given the fact it's not connected to that Canadian oil. So apparently the slipping poll numbers have convinced him to announce the lower half of that pipeline. If we can get his poll numbers just a little lower, we may be able to get the other side too. So let's get that job done. This campaign has been an extraordinary experience for my wife and for me and for our sons. Our boys have been involved in this campaign. As you know, I'm blessed to have 5 extraordinary young men, and they're able to go across the country and campaign. My son Matt really did the real duty. He and his wife went to the Northern Mariana Islands and to Guam, and although Hawaii wasn't a bad stop on the way home. And my son Josh has been up to Alaska campaigning and Idaho. It seems that where they go and I don't, I do best. And so I appreciate that. But you know, as I've gone across the country, I have been more optimistic because of the patriotism I hear, the passion for America, the innovative spirit of our people that is brought home to me time and time again. I just a few moments ago, I met with some folks who are in this audience somewhere. One of whom has a home improvement business, another who has a bus company, owns small and large buses, and gets contracts to move people around. Person who's an engineer. I just find people of different backgrounds working very hard to provide for their families, and I become more encouraged and more optimistic as I meet everyday Americans. If you just watch the news, you get a very peculiar view of what we are, because by and large the people who make the news at night are doing unusual things, typically not good things. They're either politicians or bad guys, or maybe I'm being redundant. And so I get the chance to see people across the country that love America and are doing things to make their life better and lifting the community at the same time. I also, however, am weighed down by some of the troubles folks are having, and these are tough times in America. Do you realize in the last 4 years the median income in America has dropped by 10%? So you got a lot of families that are finding less to live on. And at the same time, the prices of things like gasoline have gone up, and health insurance costs, and food and clothing, and so expenses are more demanding, and the income is less providing. We also have about 24 million Americans. I mean, it's an unthinkable number. 24 million Americans out of work or underemployed. In this, the greatest nation on earth and the greatest economy on earth, how that can go on year after year after year is just inexcusable. The president, by the way, said when he was newly elected that if he didn't turn the economy around within 3 years, he'd be looking at a one-term proposition. We're here to collect, all right? We're going to get that done. Who is on her own campaign tour. She's in Wisconsin right now, speaking there. She is telling me day in, day out that as she speaks with women, one of the things that she finds most frequently mentioned is the large debt which this country has accumulated. And she said she expected many other topics to be raised, but the idea that government keeps spending so much money and leaving a legacy of debt for her kids and for their kids is something which people are talking about. It's a topic that, Republican politicians have spoken about for a long time, but now the whole country's talking about it. And it may be because the numbers we're throwing around are thousands of billions a year of deficit, or $1 trillion. And the idea of $15.5 trillion going to $16.5 trillion, probably by the end of this year, will be close to $16.5 trillion in debt, national debt. And then on top of that, there are the entitlements of Medicare and Social Security, which are critical and important parts of our national program. But they have made promises that have not been funded to the tune of $62 trillion on top of that. And so we're on a course which could lead us toward a Greece-like setting. And if the world were to become concerned about America's ability to pay back its debts, interest rates could skyrocket. We could find ourselves with even larger and larger deficits, and then there could be an economic calamity unlike anything we've ever known. And so it's critical at this stage to have someone who understands what it takes to rein in the excesses. I'm hearing that across the country. This president promised to cut the deficit in half. He's doubled it. He told us to get us back to work and hold unemployment below 8%. Hasn't been below 8% in 37 straight months. He said he'd cut taxes for middle-income taxpayers. That hasn't happened either. This man is out of ideas and he's out of excuses, and in 2012, we're going to make sure we get him out of office. I look at what he's done in his almost 3.5 years in office, and I just shake my head, because having lived my life in the private sector, having worked in business, small business, and then bigger business, having seen jobs come and go, having competed with businesses around the world, I understand which things will encourage job growth and ignite growth in our economy, and which things instead will retard job growth and vitality and growth in our economy. And I watch what he's doing, and virtually everything he's doing is making it harder for this economy to put people back to work. Yeah. And And I say that because I understand what it is that fuels our economy. It is freedom. Economic freedom, the freedom of individuals to pursue their dreams, to dream and imagine that they might start a business or get a degree and then take that and lead their career in a direction that lifts their family or that starts a business and they're able to hire other people. This kind of freedom, this conviction that the future is bright, and that if they take certain efforts in their life and follow the course of great values and hard work and education, that they can achieve their dreams. This conviction, these freedoms are what drive America's economy to be the leader in the world. When the founders wrote that extraordinary document, the Declaration of Independence, and they chose their words carefully. They said that the Creator had endowed us with our rights, not the king, not the state, but the Creator. And among those rights were life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We would be free in this country to pursue happiness. It would not be guaranteed to us by a government. Instead, we would be free to pursue it. And by virtue of that, given that promise, that foundational principle, this became the place on the planet that every pioneer wanted to come. Every innovator, everyone who hoped to change the condition of their family and lift them, wanted to come to America, and they have for hundreds of years. This freedom, we have political freedom, we have religious freedom, personal freedoms. We also have economic freedom, the right to choose our course in life. And that has spurned industries and businesses, small and large, that employ us. And by the way, the success of some does not make the rest of us poorer. The success of some lifts our nation and makes us all better off. And so I see our president attacking economic freedom, and he doesn't know what he's doing. He doesn't understand that when he passes something like Dodd-Frank with 800 pages or so of legislation and hundreds of new pages to be written of regulation, that it doesn't hurt the big banks, by the way. Oh, they're doing just fine. I spoke with the head of one big bank. He said they have hundreds of lawyers working on Dodd-Frank. It's the small community banks that are having a hard time. They can't afford all those lawyers. They're the ones that are struggling. And they're the ones that typically lend to the small businesses that get this economy going. He attacks economic freedom by making it harder for banks to be in business and to lend. And then you have, of course, his plan to raise taxes. He wants to raise taxes, the marginal tax rate in this country, from 35% to 40%. Now, let me just mention something to you. About 54% of America's workers that are in the private sector work in businesses that are taxed at the individual level. Not corporate taxes, individual taxes. So when he raises that tax rate from 35% to 40%, he makes it harder for those little businesses to hire people or to pay more money to them and to grow their business. So as he raises these taxes, he takes away economic freedom from the people who rely upon it to put others to work. And it not only extends to the businesses we have and to our banking system, but also to the marketplace itself. He puts his hand on the scales of the marketplace and distorts what's happening there. When he gives $500 million to Solyndra, which, by the way, had a number of campaign contributors there, all right, he picks winners and losers. Well, actually, in this case, just losers. And by the way, to every other entrepreneur or innovator in the area of solar engineering, they probably just lost their financing when they hear the government chose one to give $500 million to. And so all those other ideas, all those other dreamers, all those other innovators, they lost their dream when the government chose to put $500 million in Solyndra. And by the way, you of course lost your $500 million as taxpayers. And the same with Enterwan, and probably down the road potentially with Fisker and Tesla. When the president interferes with the free marketplace, he substitutes the heavy hand of government for the invisible hand of the market, to the peril of economic freedom. That must end. I love this country. I love the people of this country. I love the spirit of the people of this country. I want to restore the economic vitality that'll put people back to work and get gas prices down and keep the money from oil and gas and coal in our country instead of sending money outside our country to buy energy. I want to get our economy going again, and I know how to do it. And it's by restoring the principles that made us the nation we are. It's by restoring economic freedom and encouraging enterprise. It's by keeping taxes down and having regulators understand their job is not to crush enterprise, but to encourage it and to stimulate it. By making sure we take advantage of our energy resources. By building that pipeline from Canada, for Pete's sakes. That's one of the easiest I know how to do. By opening up new markets for our goods and our services. And by the way, for closing down the cheaters. China's been cheating by manipulating their currency and stealing our intellectual property and hacking into our computers, government and otherwise. That's got to stop. We've got to do these things to get America working again, and I will, because I understand the economy, having lived in the economy. I think it helps, if you want to create a private sector job, to have had a private sector job, and I have. And so I'm going to pause here and turn to you and let you ask a question or two here. And you can ask anything. There's a microphone. He's got a mic here, and there's another one over there. And you know, that young lady looks fine right there. She could ask a question. She's ready to go. Hi there.
Hi, my name is Catherine.
Looks like we're having a hard time connecting here too. Try it again. Keep going.
My name is Catherine Carter, and my husband and I are on a political date night tonight.
Wow, I never heard of one of those.
I'm a pretty good wife right now. As a disenfranchised independent who just changed to be a moderate Republican in my registration, I voted for Obama in 2008. Yeah, I hear it from my family too.
We need a lot of converts. That's I appreciate your being here today. Thank you.
I am beyond disappointed in Obama's inability to work with the legislature to make positive change. And I want to ask, how will you use the bully pulpit to force the legislature and the government to make the needed changes to help our economy? And if you could give a specific story, because that's what I care about, and that's where Obama has failed my vote.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. We're going to turn in that microphone to get a Republican microphone. All right. So it doesn't cut in and out on you all the time. One that works. Exactly right. Let me tell you, the president. That's a good line. Thank you. Thank you. You know, the president campaigned on this idea of bringing Republicans and Democrats together and taking on the greatest challenges that the nation had. And he described those: Medicare, Social Security, solvency. He's offered no solutions to that whatsoever. The economy and so forth. He just hasn't gotten the job done. And I think part of the reason for his failure is that in his first term, in his first, 2 years, he had all Democrats in the positions he needed them. He had a dominant majority in the House and in the Senate. And so he didn't think he needed to have the support of people across the aisle, and made no particular effort to engage Republicans in his plans or to solicit their input and fashion legislation that would be supported by both parties. And the result of that, of course, is that a lot of things just didn't get done after those 2 years were over. His first 2 years, he came into office and pushed through with all Democrats his plans. He pushed through Obamacare. And the nation did everything in its power to say, don't do it. Please don't do it. We even elected a Republican senator in Massachusetts, for Pete's sakes, all right, to say, do not pass Obamacare. And yet he pushed it through anyway. And that is in part why I think he's been so, well, first of all, I think the things he did in his first 2 years were by and large, or without exception, harmful to the economy and to the nation. And then in the time that's followed, I think he's found it harder to get things done, in part because he doesn't have those relationships across the aisle. Now, I had the good fortune / bad fortune, depending how you look at it, like Governor Ehrlich here, to have been elected in a state with a legislature that was 85% Democrat. It did not take me long to figure out I had to find places of common ground. I had to find coalitions among Democrats and Republicans that we could bring together. And I also knew I wasn't going to get everything I wanted. And so I fought for some things I didn't get, but I got a lot of what I did want. I was able to balance the budget every year without raising taxes. We cut taxes 19 times. We drove our schools to be #1 in the nation. By the way, we have charter schools. There was an effort by some of my legislature. They passed a bill saying no more charter schools. And I vetoed that, but then worked with some Democrats in the Black Caucus to work with me and to stand up. But because, by the way, charter schools are good for kids that are in inner cities that don't have choices that people have out of the suburbs. And so I can tell you some of the things I did. Every week, the Senate President and the Speaker of the House and I spent an hour or two together. We went collectively to each other's offices week after week, and so we talked about the challenges we saw in the state. We let our hair down and talked about those things, built a relationship of trust. I didn't attack them. I didn't go out, as the president is, and attack Republicans, saying things, putting up these straw men, accusing us of various things that aren't true, and then attacking those things. I instead recognize these people I have to work with. And if I attack them dishonestly and unmercifully, they're not going to work with me. And so that has to come in Washington. I'm not in this race as the next step in my political career. I don't have a political career. My career was in business. I spent 25 years in business and then went off to the Olympics. I've only been in government 4 years. I want to get America right again. And I'm going to work with Republicans. I'm going to find those good Democrats who care about the country desperately, as we do, who want to make sure we don't hit the Greek-like wall, who want to get America on the right track. And I'm going to get that job done by making every effort I can, not attacking, instead looking for those relationships of trust. And I want to get America strong for my kids and my grandkids and for yours. Thank you. Thank you. And up here's one.
Welcome to Maryland, Governor.
I know that mic works.
Good. Bill Campbell, how can we end too big to fail? That seems to be a huge problem in our economy and government.
Well, the answer is that if an enterprise gets in trouble, instead of the government stepping in to try and bail it out, we should allow that enterprise to go through the normal process of bankruptcy, perhaps a managed bankruptcy or a bankruptcy process, and then emerge out the other side having shed itself of its excessive burdens. That's what happens in businesses of all kinds that get in trouble around the country. And I think the right course for us is not to think that the government has to step in and bail out enterprises that are large, but instead recognize that those enterprises should go through bankruptcy. We saw, for instance, initially when General Motors and Chrysler came to Washington asking for money, politicians thought they had to write them checks, and that wasn't going to work. Ultimately, they had to go through bankruptcy and shed some of their costs. And by the way, that means they wrote off some of their debt. People who had debt that they'd loaned to those companies lost their investment in that debt. That's what happens if you believe that General Motors is going to pay back a loan and then they can't. Well, you lose out. That's the right way to proceed, as opposed to have the government step in and bail people out where the process of bankruptcy is a better course. So my view is we follow the law and we let people go through let enterprises like General Motors and others go through the bankruptcy process. I do want to tell you that there was a different occurrence that happened at the end of President Bush's term. And this was that there was a concern in this country that all the banks were going to go out of business, that there was going to be a run on the banks. And you might think, well, no, all the banks had guaranteed $100,000 of depositors, and so people didn't have to have a run on the banks. But you know, companies have millions of dollars in the bank to pay for their payroll and to buy things from other companies. And they became concerned, the companies did, that their banks were going to go out of business, so they started pulling their money out. And there was a fear that the whole economic system of America would collapse, that all of our banks, or virtually all, would go out of business. And in that circumstance, President Bush and Hank Paulson said, we've got to do something to show we're not going to let the whole system go out of business. I think they were right. I know some people disagree with me. I think they were right to do that. They kept, I keep hearing the president say that he's responsible for keeping America from going into a Great Depression. No, no, no. That was President George W. Bush and Hank Paulson that stepped in and kept that from happening. Thank you. There's a young lady in the front row. Hi.
Hi. I'm a nurse practitioner and a nursing educator. And I want you to know, first of all, that tens of thousands of nurses and doctors are utterly opposed to Obamacare. Yeah. Even though you'll hear otherwise. And what I want to know is, what approach will you take to reforming health care? Because we do need reformed health care. What he's done is not reformed health care at all. And what it has done is actually given jobs to a lot of people, but it hasn't improved the quality of health care.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And Obamacare is not able to deal with the major issues that we have in healthcare, which of course is the high cost of healthcare and a desire to keep high quality in healthcare. That doesn't deal with. The fact that it doesn't even touch malpractice is a pretty clear indication that it doesn't focus on getting the cost of healthcare down. And as you know, I plan, if I'm fortunate enough to be elected president, on the first day to provide a waiver from Obamacare to all 50 states, because I'd like to stop it in its tracks and then repeal it. And then, but your question is, and replace it with what? And let me tell you a couple of things I'd like to see it replaced with. One, I'd like people to be able to own their health insurance, their own health insurance, and this is, and I know most people get their insurance, almost all of us get our insurance from our employer, and that's because under our tax code, if the employer buys your insurance for you, the employer gets a tax deduction. So it's more economic for your employer to buy your insurance for you than for you to buy it for yourself. But you ask yourself, why? Why shouldn't you be able to get the same tax deduction if you want to buy it for yourself? And my view is, let's change the tax code so you get the same deduction your employer got, so that way you can buy your own insurance, and then, by the way, you can pick policies that work for you and the kind of coverage you want. What I'm afraid you're going to see with Obamacare is a government bureaucrat telling you what you have to have in your policy, what coverages, meaning what treatments and procedures have to be provided or can't be provided, ultimately telling you what you can and cannot have as treatments. That is not something I'm willing to see. I don't want it in my life. I know the people I talk with don't want it in their life. I'd love to be able to own my own insurance policy, and I sure as heck don't want an Obamacare insurance policy. And let me make one other point, and that is this, which is, I was speaking with a doctor, I think it was just 2 nights ago, and he said that he has found that people who have health savings accounts, he was an orthopedic surgeon, he said when he tells them that they need an MRI or something like that, they'll say, fine, I'll get the MRI. Where can I get it least expensively? And he'll tell them, well, this one over here does it. It can provide it at a good price. He said when people have a stake in how much something costs, they shop around. And I believe that you're going to find in healthcare, ultimately, as we own our own policies, we're going to have an incentive to shop around a bit and look for the providers that provide the best quality at the best price. That's a market dynamic. Markets work. One of the reasons in this country over the years we have better and better things at lower and lower cost is because consumers if you will, beat a path to the provider that has the lowest cost and the best quality. That has to happen in healthcare, in my opinion. We have to move from the reimbursement system we have now to one which is more driven by consumers making choices based on their knowledge of quality and cost. I hope that doesn't sound too complicated or strange, but the key thing is I want you to own your own policy and have a break in being able to do it from the tax folks. Thank you.
Governor Romney, I wanted to ask you a question about foreign policy, two-part. What do you think about the Obama administration in the Middle East, and what do you think about an administration that sets exit dates independent of the situation on the ground?
Well, you answered that last question. It's unthinkable that you I'll answer the last one first. That you say here's the date we're going to leave, regardless of the circumstances, because that only communicates one to the enemy that at some point certain you're leaving, and so they can say, well, let's either hold back until that point or let's be aggressive. But they make their plans based upon knowing your plans when we don't know theirs. And in the case of course, Afghanistan, by announcing us a date for when combat operations would end and when we bring our troops out, it told the Taliban what to expect. It told Karzai what to expect. He of course, has to make his plans for self-preservation and for his continuation in the country. And so he says, okay, Americans leaving there. If he doesn't think he's ready to take over with his security forces, then he better cozy up to someone else. And this is counter to our interests. We should normally act from our national security interests, not from the president's personal political interests. So you don't announce a specific date. And with regards to Iran, when you said the Middle East, obviously what's happened with the Arab Spring, it's become an Arab winter in some respects. Nations that we hope to become more representative, in some cases, are becoming more Islamist, or we fear that, and that can be very troubling. Time will tell. We should be actively involved there, trying to pull those nations. We and our friends around the world, the Europeans and others, should be trying to help pull those nations towards a more permanent form of representative government. But the big issue in the Middle East, of course, is Iran. And we're all tired of conflict, for good reason. We're tired of the long conflict in Iraq and in Afghanistan. And when we hear about Iran building a nuclear weapon and talk about that being unacceptable, we go, oh my goodness, how in the world could we be involved in some kind of military action? And I just have to point out that Iran having a nuclear weapon is of a whole different character than anything we've been involved in a long, long time. This is the state sponsor of terror in the world. Yeah. They are the people who provide resources to Hezbollah and to Hamas. Hezbollah is now in this hemisphere. It has operations in Latin America. If Hezbollah were to have fissile material from Iran, it could potentially use that material here, setting off nuclear devices in our country. This is the idea of Iran as a nuclear nation is unacceptable to America. And so and the fact that they've been able to speed this process along over the last 3.5 years is another indication of this president's failure. What he should have done is put in crippling sanctions from day one. He's waited really 3.5 years to try and pursue that. He should have also stood up for the dissident voices that took to the streets in Iran and communicated our support of democracy and freedom instead of trying to cozy up with the regime there. And he should have communicated from the very beginning the total unacceptability of Iran becoming nuclear. Somehow what we hear from the administration sounds like they're more frightened that Israel might take military action than they're frightened of Iran becoming nuclear. And I'll make it very clear, it is unacceptable to us for that nation to become nuclear. Thank you. Yes, sir. A microphone is coming your way. Thank you.
Thank you for coming to Maryland. First, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, thank you. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing good.
Good.
And I did have more of a... Start quick. Since 2010, for many reasons, I have blogged between friends that you will be our GOP candidate and will be the next president. And I want to thank you for making me correct, because I hate being wrong. In many ways, you and I are similar. I'm a little you. I too have had a dream since the age of 19 when I returned home from serving my country, that I wanted to own my own business. And in 2007, that dream came true. I've hired some people, and I'm trying to grow my business. The one thing was I was too ignorant to know the barriers of our government, so I keep on moving through them. That the government puts in place to deter businesses, but I've been lucky. Like you, I've made it through the difficult times, and I've hired people. I mentioned that. The only difference is you've mentioned you failed a few times. I haven't failed yet.
You will.
Which leads me to my next comment.
Is this in the nature of the private sector?
My next comment is, do not fail us. You have an opportunity to lead this nation out of the worst of our times I and many others have ever seen in our lifetime. Do not fail us now in leading this great nation out of the place we are today because of a failure in the current leadership or lack of leadership of our country. Please, please return our politics, which is strayed from the ideas of our founding fathers, back to a government that has the best interest of the people in mind and not those that reside in D.C. You have an opportunity to return D.C. to a Republican-controlled presidency for at least the next 12 years if you do things right. And I offer this challenge to you and hope that you succeed. Thank you for coming to Maryland.
Thank you. I don't quite get the 12 years, but I'll take 8. All right. Although the Supreme Court justices that a president appoints, they're in it for a lot longer than 12 years, and that'll make a difference. Obviously, I appreciate your comment and your best wishes, and wish you very well in your enterprises. Avoid politics, and you can avoid what I've found myself in the middle of. I'm just sort of kidding on that. I can tell you that I'm concerned about the debt in the country and the deficits every year. I'm concerned about a president that doesn't understand our economy well enough to know that innovation and businesses are built on dreams, and dreams are very fragile. And as he expands the hand of government into the marketplace and excessive regulation and larger taxation, that he kills dreams and dreamers. And that America depends on those dreams to put people to work and to have a bright and prosperous future. That we also depend on those dreams to be able to defend ourselves. We face a dangerous world. I mean, right now we sort of feel good because we're getting our troops home from Iraq. They're home now. Our troops from Afghanistan are coming back, and we're breathing a sigh of relief. But you know, there are some real challenges out there in the world. North Korea is going through a change in leadership. China says they own the South China Sea, and we should have to get their permission to bring our ships through it, our naval vessels through it. By the way, about half the world's trade goes through the South China Sea. The Middle East is in turmoil. Syria, of course, is right now in a fragile state. Pakistan has nuclear weapons. Afghanistan is most recently quite troubled by events there. It's a dangerous world. I watch the president. He seems there's only one place in the budget he's willing to cut, and that's the military. About $1 trillion, $1,000 billion over 10 years. He's willing to take out of the military. I don't understand that. I mean, the state of our Navy, by the way, we have fewer ships now than any time since 1917. Isn't that something? And our Air Force is older and smaller than any time since 1947 when it was founded. You know how stretched our troops have been, the number of rotations they've had going into conflict, and yet he wants to reduce our number of troops. Tens of thousands of people. I don't understand it. My view, by the way, is just the opposite. I want to increase shipbuilding from 9 a year to 17. I want to build more aircraft. I want to bring in another 100,000 troops. I want to add this as well. I want to make sure we give our veterans the care our veterans deserve. I am of the Ronald Reagan philosophy, which is that a strong America is the best deterrent for war and adventurism in the world. A very strong American military, unquestioned leadership in the world is essential for world peace. And so those are some of the things that will motivate a presidency if I'm in that position. I see a gentleman underneath the light there that caught my attention. Hi.
Hi. Is it on?
It's on, yeah.
I'm an ex-Illinois farm boy. Congratulations on the win.
Thank you. Thanks, Illinois. Thank you. Thank you.
And I'd like you to just maybe address for a moment or two the connection you see between our innovation and education.
Yeah, thank you. I happen to believe that one of the great failures of the last couple of decades is our failure to recognize that we're leaving our kids in a weaker and weaker position, and that if we have a generation or two coming up that doesn't have the skills of kids of other nations, we can't keep up with the rest of the world. And K through 12 has not received enough attention from this from our nation. I was a governor of a state. I came in, as you probably know, and I, like Governor Ehrlich, I wanted to make my state do well in education. I asked people in the education community what I had to do to improve our schools. And they said, well, that's simple, just have smaller classroom size. That made sense to me, but I decided to look at the data. We have 351 different cities and towns in my state, and we test all of our kids. We test them regularly in English and math. And so we can get for each city and town the average test score for a child there. And I also can get for each city and town the average classroom size. So I plotted the two. How well the kids were doing, plotted against the average classroom size to see if there was a relationship. And there wasn't. As a matter of fact, the school districts with the smallest classrooms, their kids were performing in the bottom 10%. Then I started reading work. There's a group called McKinsey & Company. It's a big consulting firm. They have a division that does pro bono work called the McKinsey Institute. They've looked at schools around the world, tried to understand why Finland is doing so well, and South Korea and Singapore. And they also mentioned Chicago and Boston as places here that have done well. And they look at all the data and they say, well, it's not classroom size. It's not even spending per pupil. The key factor that determines the quality of education is the quality of teacher. And so they point out that in the best school systems in the world, they typically draw their teachers from the top 10% of college graduates. And we don't, by and large. And one of the reasons we don't is that we don't pay very well starting salaries for teachers, all right? And the teachers union is very consumed with retirement benefits and pensions and tenure, but they're not real good at helping starting teachers. We got it backwards. We got to put the kids first and the unions behind, and do a better job with our teachers. Now there are other things. School choice makes a big difference. I know in my city or my state of Massachusetts, we have a very large Catholic population and a lot of Catholic schools. It's a huge blessing to downtown, to the Boston area, because of all the Catholic schools that are there that provide education, excellent education. Kids have a choice. My wife volunteered at a school started by a couple of nuns called Mother Caroline Academy, and the cost is almost nothing. And the kids are inner city at-risk girls that go to this school. And this is a great blessing. Choice, competition. The one way to improve the quality of education is having more charter schools, more competition. And by the way, I also like the fact that we test our kids in my state. You can't graduate from high school in my state unless you pass a graduation exam in English, math, and then I added science to it. And by the way, if you graduate in the top quarter of those who take the test, we give you a 4-year tuition-free scholarship to a public institution of higher learning. So you have an incentive to do well. And So I'm proud of the fact, and by the way, this wasn't all me, this was my predecessors as well that put a lot of this in place. And what it led to is our state's kids ranking #1 in the nation. And they have now for several years running. On all 4 measures that they test kids nationally, our kids rank #1. We know what it takes to improve our schools. And in some cases, the impediment to doing that is the interest of the teachers' union leadership, not the teachers. All right, the teachers are for us. We want to help the teachers, the parents, and the kids. And if I'm president, I'm going to try and stand up to the federal teachers' unions and instead make sure our kids come first. You guys, I'm told I've taken you as long as I'm allowed to. It's warm. I know a few more hands are up. Come on my website. We'll talk some more. I want to tell you how much I appreciate your being here. Oh, there were way more hands than we have time. And the temperature now having reached 140 in here, I think the fire marshal will think we're going to spontaneously combust. So I want to say how much I appreciate your help. Look, here, there he is right there. He says, we're okay. We're okay. Boy, these flags here, by the way. Do you notice these flags? You notice the stars are different sizes? It's because this shows the history of the flag here and this great nation. The sacrifice of our men and women for liberty. One of the things that just broke my heart was watching the president go around the world apologizing for America early in his term. There's no nation in the history of the earth that has done more to free people from tyranny and oppression than the people of the United States of America. And recognize as well that those words of the founders, the vision to find economic freedom and political freedom and religious freedom and personal freedom, that vision is the only vision that has ever been proved to lift people out of poverty and to provide for prosperity for people. Economic freedom, free enterprise, what we have here and what we've shared with the world and promoted with the world, that also has been a blessing to the world. We've helped pull people out of poverty. I mean, I even look at a place like China, where 20 million people or so come off the farm every year out of abject poverty. And why is that? They finally threw out socialism, communism to a certain degree and adopted what we have, which is a degree of free enterprise. What this country has shed in blood and what we have provided in inspiration to the world has benefited the world enormously. I'm proud to be an American. I'm proud of this great land. I'm proud of your support. You guys, we have work to do. Thanks so much. Good to be with you today. Thank you.